Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where this might be one of the scariest movie maths we ever do. This is downright horrifying. All right, so I would say it's from M. Night Shyamalan, but I don't know, is there a twist ending? I hope the twist ending is that movies aren't over, but I don't know, it's real scary. All right, so just like with the pandemic, well, it seemed we were finally, the light at the end of the tunnel was finally within sight. It turns out we're still stuck in the soup for who knows how much longer. Oh, this is bad. This is real bad. Yes, while F9 and then Black Widow seem to be building momentum, movies were back, baby. Remember how happy we were just a few weeks ago? That's how everybody, again, it's just like the pandemic. It's over. But no, it's not. Both those films fell close to 70% in their second weekends. And sure enough, so is Space Jam 2 in its second weekend. Yes, while movies might be able to open a little bit bigger these days, they're extremely front-loaded. There's no large audience on the fence that's persuaded to go the following weekends or for repeat viewing. Everyone who's interested goes opening weekend, and that's it. Yikes. Yikes! And while it seemed with A Quiet Place 2 and F9 that a theaters-only release strategy was the way to go, remember, just last weekend, NATO publicly chastised Disney for its digital day-and-date play with Black Widow after Black Widow plummeted in its second weekend. They were like, it's all Disney Plus's fault. Well, here comes Old and Snake Eyes, theaters only, massively underperforming. Where's your letter now, NATO, right? It's so bad. They both opened with less than half of Space Jam 2's debut, and that was available on HBO Max at no additional cost day and date. Oh, so bad. And underperforming for these two movies, not only financially, but also in terms of public opinion. With CinemaScore, Black Widow gets an A-, but Old gets a C+, and Snake Eyes a B-. Both Old and Snake Eyes are solid movies. I mean, I think that people are getting real mean. I think critics are overly harsh. I think audiences are overly harsh. I don't think either of those movies deserves grades that bad, to be honest with you. I'm sure some of you will be like, yes, they do, Grace. Those grades are so honest. Those grades are generous. I don't think they're that bad. And I have to tell you, I think both those movies will actually do quite well on streaming. I think Old and Snake Eyes have a bright digital future ahead of them. Streaming. Oh man, this was really a Pandora's box that Hollywood shouldn't have opened. I suspect that the pandemic and the proliferation of streaming services and content on said streaming services, top-notch quality content at a far lower price point and more of it than you could ever hope to get at the movie theater experience. I mean, movies were afraid when TV came out, but this is like TV on steroids. It's incredible. It's like movies but bigger. And this is training audiences to not only watch content at home, but I think be pickier about what they watch. I think you're seeing the fragmentation of the audience, which is really scary because if content becomes more and more niche, it becomes increasingly difficult to get to amass a mainstream mega hit. And mega hits are the ones that make $1 billion at the box office. Suddenly everybody's like, oh, well, I'm not that into it. Because, there's other stuff. It used to be like, hey, man, get on the party train. It's leaving the station. But now there's a bunch of party trains, and it's just a smaller party. Smaller party means less money. Unless you have a streaming service and you own all the party trains. But it's supposed to be about one party train a weekend at the box office. Now, I would have said that Marvel was immune to this horrible situation because of their huge loyal fan base. But look at Black Widow just 3 weeks out, stalled at $300 million worldwide with no path to $400 million. That's incredible, especially the longer it takes to get released in China officially. That's a disaster. And partially, well, I think almost exclusively, it's streaming to blame because there's better Marvel content available at no extra cost, much cheaper than a movie ticket, on Disney Plus. So I think streaming it's been just as bad for IPs. Now, speaking of global box office, F9 is topping out at around 600, and that's the most successful Hollywood pandemic film to date. So when will we get another billion-dollar picture? Because it ain't going to be F9 and it ain't going to be Black Widow, and they're both very far away from $1 billion. Pre-pandemic, we were starting to get the $2 billion club. That was the place to be all of a sudden. It was like, oh, just $1 billion? Who doesn't have $1 billion? Now it's like, my kingdom for $1 billion movie. Because of this, how many movies will get delayed? Where's that Spider-Man No Way Home trailer? I'm sure Sony's like, holy crap. And also, how many budgets will get reduced for movies that haven't started filming yet, or movies just outright scrapped because there isn't a big enough rate of return on investment to warrant the expense in a blockbuster? Are all the eyeballs not only going to streaming now, but soon money as well? Why spend $200 million to make Black Widow, while for $150 you can get the 6-episode Loki? I mean, that's incredible. And Loki is dominating in the streaming space. Loki is a huge hit. Wait till we get to the Nielsen section. Streaming subscriptions bring in billions of dollars. But Disney in 2019 was bringing in an extraordinary amount of money. That was I don't think that was sustainable every year. So streaming services could replace the revenue, quite frankly, that comes from movies. And Netflix just has a ridiculous amount of money. So would studios be happy with just that? I mean, they greedily thought that they could have movies and streaming services. They're like, we can have our cake and eat it too, but they're choking on it. Audiences much prefer the cheaper and more convenient option. There's a shocker. Especially since people can be horrible, especially these days. So many of you have written me that you have returned to the theater only to be reminded of how much you hated it. It's just, people on their phones, people talking. A number of you are like, yeah, I went back, but never again. I'm just going to wait. And speaking of waiting, you're willing to wait for even more movies. You're willing to wait for more movies than you were before. Something else the pandemic trained us to do. You're like, I waited this long. I'll wait 45 days longer because of the shortened window. And you've got great content to tide you over on streaming until it comes out. You want to know the big spoilers? You can easily find that out online. You don't need to actually see it right away. You'll wait the shortened 45-day window, and maybe if you still feel like it by at that point, you'll check it out. But there'll be more streaming content at that point to distract you. It's bad. Now, as for the domestic box office, much bigger movies, F9 and Black Widow, are finally surpassing first out of the gate theaters-only movie, A Quiet Place 2. Quiet Place 2, with all due respect, is a wonderful, strong franchise, but it's not the level of Fast and Furious and Marvel. But those two movies aren't going to get that much further ahead, and I don't think any of these movies are going to make it to $200 million domestic. For comparison, in 2019, $200 million was only good enough to just make it into the top 10 domestic. And that was considered a disappointment for the horror sequel. That was like, oh man, what a bummer. And oh yeah, there's the Delta variant, but honestly, I think it's the other stuff that I've just told you about. I think that's what it is. I honestly think, I'd be curious what's keeping you from going to the theater right now, because a heck of a lot less people are going. As for this weekend, at least M. Night can claim another #1 debut, even though it is the lowest opening of his career with no digital co-play to blame. And Snake Eyes is embarrassingly low for a franchise property, no matter how long it's been on standby. It's still G.I. Joe. It should have done better than this. I think that both movies show that star power is still important. You don't have to be a huge star, but you got to have a social media following to get people talking about the project. I think Florence Pugh, for instance, really helped Black Widow. Interest in that. I think, David Harbour has a strong following. This, even Scarlett Johansson, she's so silly, generated interest. There's nobody like that in either one of these films. Like LeBron. LeBron did a lot to draw attention to Space Jam 2. M. Night is supposed to be a star director, although he has a very small social media following. But also, he might have cried dumb twist ending one too many times. And as for Henry Golding, as much as Hollywood and the media and myself might wish it were different, he's just not a named talent still. And I don't think at this point he ever will be. This is bad. This is real bad. If being Snake Eyes couldn't do it for him, I just, honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't know it will. Some of you might be like, being James Bond, but after this, I think that Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are, very protective of that franchise. And I think at this point, Henry Golding is just too big a liability. He's too big a risk. I don't think Henry Cavill's right there. Although he just signed on for another spy franchise. But anyway, I was tempted to argue that maybe Henry Golding is better for female audiences because Snake Eyes is a male-centric property, and men did show up. That was the majority of the audience, but as you can see from the overall box office number, not enough men. But then Last Christmas was a huge flop. Now, Emilia Clarke has proven to be box office poison many times, so maybe the majority of the fault lies with her there, but Henry Golding didn't help at all. So it's bad. I don't think Henry Golding will ever be Bond. I think I think that opportunity is now gone. It's so sad. I thought Snake Eyes was great, but you can't argue with the numbers. Again, I still think that there's hope for both these films on streaming, so they might have a little bit of a turnaround. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when they start popping up, because we're going to talk about streaming in just a moment. How long will we have to wait to see? Well, Uni's Forever Purge hit PVOD already this weekend. That's 4 weeks out, so we can expect the same for Old. While Snake Eyes will be available on PVOD and Paramount Plus in 45 days, just like A Quiet Place 2 was. All right, now let's take a look at streaming. Interestingly, the big Hollywood studios, by the way, are trying to put Nielsen out of business across the board. They're saying that their problem is with their accreditation to do network numbers. They're saying during the pandemic they don't have a good picture and they're hurting their ad revenue because ad revenue is often based on the Nielsen ratings. But I think that it's a larger play to just take Nielsen out of contention overall because Nielsen's become very aggressive in the streaming space, as we know. It's like Nielsen has credibility, which is why I trust their rankings, and a lot of people do, and why everyone's been going over their charts every week. And I think that the big Hollywood studios want to put an end to that because the fight to keep streaming numbers secret is starting to get ugly, and I think it's going to get even uglier. As you know, of course, there's a legal case in the UK, court case in the UK, because they want streaming numbers too, and Netflix doesn't want to release them. So as for the week of June 21st, with only 3 episodes, Loki is what he always wanted to be, king. Yes, glorious purpose indeed, as he rules over the original show's top 10 with the least number of episodes. That's amazing. Totally deserved. What a juggernaut. Oh my God, I'm so happy. Now, as for movies, Disney Plus is the big winner here yet again, with Luca in its second week, number 1. And like with Loki, it's again no contest as for who the winner is. They're light years beyond the rest of the competition. That's so great. Kevin Hart's Fatherhood is runner-up, while Cruella is almost out of the top 10 with an impressive Premier Access run. I suspect the best Premier Access run to date. Disney Plus is not releasing any numbers, sure enough. So, it's hard to get excited when they'll only release numbers when it suits them. You're like, well, what do we trust here? But I do think, thanks to Nielsen, although we'll see how much longer we have these Nielsen charts, Cruella, I think, has posted very nice rankings for week to week. So over on Netflix this week, their movie of the week, they promised a movie a week in 2021. Germany's Blood Red Sky is a big hit, while Manifest continues to be so strong, it suddenly might not get canceled. It's been so strong. Like at first they were like, we're canceling it. We don't care. But after week after week after week, suddenly it's like, it might be too big to ignore. Fantastic. I know a lot of you are big fans of that show. Masters of the Universe. It debuted mid-top 10 for Netflix. Pretty standard for anime shows. I think, quite frankly, if it had been fantastic, I know some of you like it, but I think if it had been universally loved, I think that if it had been engineered to please new fans and original fans, OG fans, it would have dominated on the Netflix top 10 chart this week. But again, it's performing as many anime shows do, so I think that's fine for now. The big test is, will it be in the top 10 next week? Because, people might be hate watching it. I think it's a controversial series, and sometimes, numbers are numbers. So I think the big test will be, does it fall out of the top 10 after 1 week, or does it stay up there? So I think we'll have a better picture of how it's doing next week. And for some reason, everyone's watching Twilight. Why? Are you watching Twilight? I mean, with that and Blood Red Sky, big weekend for vampires on Netflix. Now, on iTunes, while The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard was a huge flop in theaters, it's doing great on PVOD at $20 a pop to own. Why get it now? Why wouldn't you just wait until you could get it for even cheaper? Like, that's incredible to me. For $20, you could have seen Snake Eyes or Old. That's really interesting. So again, look, this movie is reborn on PVOD, so I'm hoping the same will be I kind of liked Old. Will be for Old and Snake Eyes. I'm hoping to see the same thing. When are you going to see Old and Snake Eyes, if you were going to see them at all? What are you waiting for? What's the price point that will get you to open your wallet? Also on PVOD, Megan Fox has another hit here, this time alongside Bruce Willis. I would say king or perhaps court jester of PVOD, because these are some silly movies he's making. But both of them, interestingly enough, have 2 films like in the top 25 or top 20 in PVOD and direct-to-video. Hey, make that money, both of you. Make that money. Ain't no shame in that, especially when no one else will give you money for a theaters film. I'm impressed that Megan Fox is carving out some kind of career for herself. Good for her. She didn't give up. Now, as for what's coming up this week, this Friday, the Green Knight and Stillwater are in theaters only. Well, Jungle Cruise, which had a very impressive premiere. I watched the Behind the Attraction episode for Jungle Cruise on Disney Plus yesterday, and it was great. It really put me in the mood for the movie. I'm so excited. The embargo for Jungle Cruise, review embargo lifts on Tuesday at noon, I believe. So very excited to talk to you about that film. And it is the last premiere access movie from Disney. After that, it's theaters only for Disney and Fox films. I know some of you are like, no, that can't be. But I think they're going to try it for Free Guy and Shang-Chi. At least for Free Guy. I think they're going to see how it goes. I think Disney is going to give it a shot. We'll see. Or maybe you'll be right, and they'll be like, surprise, we're putting them on Premiere Access. But it's coming down to the wire. I already have my Free Guy screening set. And there was no screener option. Got to go to the theater for it. They're serious. Now, speaking of Disney Plus on Wednesday, they've got another debut. Tons of content on there. They're getting to be Netflix level of new content. They have Chip and Dale Park Life debuting and Robin Roberts' new interview show. HBO Max debuts reality show F-Boy Island on Thursday, keeping it classy, the first 3 episodes. And on Netflix, there's new romantic comedy Resort Love on Thursday, and on Friday, the 2nd season of Outer Banks, plus a new Jean-Claude Van Damme movie from France. That should be interesting. So what have you been watching, and what do you plan to watch? And what do you think of this situation with movies? My God, with F9 tapping out at around 600 and Black Widow probably not going to make it to 400 million. I think it's almost impossible at this point. That's incredible. And when do you think we'll get another billion-dollar movie? I honestly don't know the answer at this point. All right, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now. So sad, so sad. Oh, the movie business. All right, check out some other videos. Bye.